A humble maid who spent years caring for the sick twin sons of a wealthy Texas billionaire was suddenly accused of stealing the very medicine that kept them alive. She was dragged into court with no lawyer, humiliated in front of flashing cameras, and left alone against the power of the rich. Everyone believed she was guilty because money spoke louder than her tears. Reporters called her a thief. Strangers whispered her name like a curse. But in the middle of the trial, when it seemed nothing could save her, something happened that no one expected. The billionaire's own twin sons, the same boys she had fed, bathed, and loved like her own children, appeared at the courtroom doors and spoke the words that changed everything. That moment turned the entire case upside down, revealing a truth that even power couldn't silence. Before we continue with this story, dear viewers, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's begin. The morning started like any other, quiet, calm, and full of routine. Olivia Kate walked through the long marble hallway of the Walker mansion, holding a tray of breakfast for the twin boys. She had worked there for almost 7 years, since the day the doctors said the children might not live long without constant care. She was more than a maid. She was their comfort, their voice, and sometimes their strength. Ben and Alex were only 8, both gentle and cheerful despite their condition. Their laughter filled the mansion on days when hope felt small. Olivia loved them like her own. She knew every sound they made, every medicine they took, every small fear they tried to hide. That morning, as she helped them eat, she noticed something different. Michael Walker, their father, had not greeted them as usual. He often left early for meetings, but that day his office door was closed and the air in the house felt heavy. When Olivia finished feeding the boys, she washed her hands and prepared their medicine. She walked to the storage room where the small refrigerator held the expensive vials, each one worth more than most people earned in a year. The door required a special key, which she kept on a chain around her neck. She opened it carefully, counted the vials, and frowned. 3 bottles were missing. Her breath caught in her throat. She checked again, hoping she had miscounted. She hadn't. 3 doses were gone. She froze in place, her mind racing. Could the doctor have taken them? Had Michael moved them? No one else had access to this room but her. Before she could think further, the office door opened behind her. Michael Walker stepped out. Tall, calm, dressed in a dark suit that carried the smell of power and pride. His voice came low and firm. "Olivia, I need to see you in my office." Her heart sank. She wiped her hands, took off her gloves, and followed him. Inside the office, the lights were dim, the air cold. Michael stood by the window, his back turned. He didn't offer her a seat. "Do you know why you're here?" he asked. "No, sir," she said softly, her hands clasped in front of her apron. He turned around slowly, his face hard. 3 bottles of my son's medication are missing. You're the only one who touches that refrigerator." Olivia blinked. "Missing? That can't be true. I checked every—" "Don't lie," he interrupted sharply. "The count was done by my assistant and confirmed by the supplier. Do you know how much that medicine costs? Each vial could save their lives, and now 3 are gone." Her body trembled. "Sir, I swear I didn't take anything. I love those boys. I would never." "Enough," he said coldly. "I've already called the police." The words hit her like a blow. She stepped back, tears filling her eyes. "Police? Mr. Walker, please. There must be some mistake. Maybe your assistant." He cut her off again, his tone growing harsher. "Don't blame others. You were the only one there. You think I don't know how people like you think? You see a chance to make money and you take it." Olivia shook her head quickly, her voice breaking. "No, sir, that's not who I am. I've cared for your sons day and night. I've never asked for anything. I would never hurt them." He walked closer, his presence heavy, his expression unreadable. "You'll have your chance to explain that in court." When he turned away, she stood frozen, unable to move. The world she had built inside that mansion, all the years of love and sacrifice, came crashing down in seconds. That night, Olivia sat alone in her small apartment. Her uniform still smelled faintly of the twins' medicine. She couldn't eat, she couldn't sleep. Her phone buzzed with messages from people she knew, all asking the same question. Did you really steal from those kids? She turned the phone face down and began to cry quietly. By morning, the police arrived. They searched her apartment, opened drawers, checked cupboards. They found nothing. But that didn't matter. The story had already spread. "Billionaire's maid steals from sick kids." Those were the headlines plastered everywhere. At the courthouse, reporters surrounded her. Cameras flashed, microphones pushed toward her face. "Miss Olivia, do you have anything to say? Why did you take the medicine? Do you feel guilty?" She said nothing. Her voice wouldn't come out. Inside the courtroom, she sat alone at the defense table. Michael sat across from her, calm, surrounded by his lawyers. He didn't look at her. The prosecutor spoke loudly, accusing her of betrayal, greed, and selfishness. He said she saw a chance to make money from tragedy. He said she had used her position to steal from the very children who trusted her. Each word felt like a knife. Olivia tried to speak, but the judge stopped her. "You'll have your turn," he said flatly. Her eyes filled with tears. No one cared about her side. No one wanted to hear about the nights she stayed awake holding the boys when they couldn't breathe. No one remembered the woman who never left their side when nurses gave up. Hours passed like years. When the court adjourned for the day, Olivia walked out quietly, her legs weak. Outside, the reporters were still waiting, shouting questions she didn't answer. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "God, please, don't let them believe this." Her voice trembled, her body tired, but deep down, she felt a small spark. She had nothing left but truth, and somehow, she knew the truth would speak for itself one day. As she walked away from the courthouse, the whispers followed her, but she didn't look back. Something deep inside told her this story was far from over. Ah, way. The morning light crept through the small cracks of Olivia's curtain, touching the tired face that hadn't rested all night. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her hands still trembling from what had happened in court. The world outside kept moving, but inside her small apartment, time felt frozen. She sat at the edge of her bed, staring at the photo of the twin boys. Ben and Alex were smiling in their matching blue shirts, their fragile hands holding a toy airplane she had bought with her savings. That picture used to bring her joy, but now it hurt. They were probably home with their father, wondering why their maid never came back. The thought of them believing she was guilty tore her apart. Olivia got up slowly and poured herself a cup of water. Her stomach was empty, but she couldn't eat. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Michael's cold face and heard his voice saying, "You'll have your chance to explain that in court." She whispered to herself, "I didn't steal anything," as if saying it again and again might change something. Her phone buzzed on the table. It was another message from a number she didn't know. "Thieves like you don't deserve freedom," it read. She dropped the phone, her heart sinking. People she had never met were now part of her punishment. Later that afternoon, Olivia stepped outside for the first time since the trial began. The air felt heavy, and even the sunlight seemed to burn her skin. She walked down the street with her head low, afraid of the stairs. At the bus stop, two women nearby were talking. "Did you hear about that maid who stole from her boss's sick kids?" one said. "Yeah, it's all over the news. I saw her face. How could someone do that?" Olivia froze. They were talking about her. She wanted to turn around and tell them it wasn't true, but what good would it do? To them, she was already guilty. She got on the bus quietly and sat at the back. Every bump on the road made her chest ache. The city outside looked the same, but she didn't belong in it anymore. When she reached the courthouse again, she took a deep breath before walking up the stairs. She didn't have a lawyer, but she was determined to face the truth head-on. Inside, the same crowd was waiting. Reporters lined the walls, whispering and pointing as she entered. Michael Walker sat at the front beside his lead lawyer, Laura Price. Olivia noticed the calm smile on Laura's face, the kind of smile that hid something. She remembered seeing Laura a few times at the mansion, always polite, always in control. The judge entered, and everyone stood. When the session began, Laura rose from her seat, holding a stack of papers. "Your Honor," she said smoothly, "we have new evidence that confirms the defendant's guilt." The screen behind her lit up with security footage. It showed Olivia entering the storage room, opening the refrigerator, and taking out a small box. Gasps filled the courtroom. Olivia stared at the screen, confused. She remembered that day. She had gone in to check the medicine before giving the boys their dose. She never took anything. The video had no sound, no explanation, just silent images that made her look guilty. "That's not what happened," Olivia whispered, but her voice was lost under the noise of the room. Laura continued, "The defendant was the only person with access to this room. The footage speaks for itself." The judge nodded slowly, taking notes. Then Laura placed another file on the table. "We also have records showing large deposits made into the defendant's bank account days after the theft." Olivia's mouth fell open. "That's not my account," she said loudly. "I've never seen that before." The judge looked at her briefly. "You'll have a chance to speak, Miss Kate," he said. Her knees went weak. Every piece of evidence was being turned against her, and no one wanted to hear the truth. She gripped the edge of the table, her eyes filling with tears. From across the room, Michael avoided her gaze. He sat still, his hands folded, his face blank. To him, it seemed the case was already over. When it was finally Olivia's turn to speak, she stood up slowly. "Your Honor," she began, her voice shaking, "I didn't steal anything. I've cared for those boys since they were born. I love them like my own children. I would never hurt them." The judge raised a hand gently. "Miss Kate, we understand your emotions, but we need facts, not feelings." Her lips trembled, her heart breaking. "The facts are, I'm innocent," she whispered. But the courtroom stayed cold. People whispered again, some shaking their heads. To them, she was a liar. When the judge called for a recess, Olivia walked to the restroom and locked herself inside. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were red, her face pale. "You have to be strong," she told herself. "For them." She took a deep breath and wiped her tears. Back inside, the hearing resumed. Laura spoke again, presenting new evidence. This time, it was printed text messages, supposedly between Olivia and a buyer on the black market. The messages mentioned prices, meeting places, and the exact name of the missing medicine. Olivia gasped. "Those are fake," she cried. "I've never written that in my life." The courtroom fell into silence for a moment, then filled again with whispers. The judge's face stayed unreadable. Michael leaned toward his lawyer and whispered something, but his expression remained calm. Olivia noticed a small smirk on Laura's lips. Her hands shook uncontrollably. It felt like the walls were closing in. Every lie, every twisted piece of evidence was building a cage around her. The judge finally looked up. "We'll continue tomorrow," he said. "Court is adjourned." As everyone stood, reporters rushed toward Olivia again. Cameras flashed in her face. Someone shouted, "How much did you sell it for?" Another said, "Are you proud of yourself?" She pushed past them, tears streaming down her cheeks. The sky outside was gray, clouds hanging low as if the whole city was watching her suffer. She sat on the courthouse steps for a long time, unable to move. Her hands covered her face. Somewhere, in that big mansion, Ben and Alex were probably asking for her, wondering where she went. She took a deep breath and whispered, "If no one believes me, I'll still fight. For them." The wind blew softly against her face as she stood up again. She didn't know how she would win, but something inside her refused to break. The truth was still alive inside her heart, even if the world had already buried it. The next morning, the sky over Austin was pale gray, as if the sun itself didn't want to rise. Olivia stood outside the courthouse gate, holding her small handbag tightly against her chest. She had no lawyer, no protection, and no reason to hope, yet something inside her wouldn't let her run away. Her hands were cold, her knees weak, but she walked up the stairs one step at a time. Each step felt heavier than the last. People were already waiting inside. Reporters gathered near the entrance, whispering as soon as they saw her. One of them said softly, "That's her, the maid who stole from those poor kids." Olivia didn't look up. She pushed through the crowd and entered the courtroom quietly. The same faces were waiting: the judge, the lawyers, the reporters, and Michael Walker sitting straight in his dark blue suit. He didn't look at her. He sat with his arms crossed, eyes fixed on the papers in front of him. His expression showed nothing. When the hearing began, the air grew tense. The prosecutor spoke first, summarizing all the fake evidence from the day before. His voice was sharp, and each word made Olivia's chest ache. Then he announced they had one more witness, someone from the mansion staff. A woman named Diane, who worked as a cleaner, walked slowly to the stand. She looked nervous, but not afraid. The prosecutor smiled and said, "Mrs. Diane, please tell the court what you saw." Diane glanced at Olivia before speaking. I saw Miss Olivia near the storage room that night. The lights were off, but I saw her leave holding something wrapped in a white cloth." The crowd gasped. Olivia shook her head quickly. "That's not true," she said. "I was checking the air filter near the door, not taking anything. I wasn't holding anything." The judge silenced her with a look. "You'll speak when it's your turn." Olivia sat back down, tears forming in her eyes. Her heart pounded painfully as she realized the lies were growing. The truth was shrinking, buried under voices stronger than hers. The prosecutor thanked Diane and ended his questions. When the judge asked if Olivia had anyone to speak for her, she looked down. She had no one. No lawyer, no witness, no friend. The judge sighed quietly and said they would take a short break. Olivia left the courtroom and went to the small waiting area. Her body felt heavy. She sat down on a hard wooden chair and stared at the floor. Every sound, every footstep, every whisper felt louder than it should. As she sat there, she heard two voices down the hallway. She recognized one of them, Laura Price, Michael's lawyer. The other voice belonged to a man. Laura's tone was low but clear. "You got the footage edited, right?" The man answered, "Yes, but it wasn't easy. The original copies are gone. You'd better handle the payment soon." Olivia froze. Her heart skipped. She leaned closer to the wall, listening. Laura continued, "Make sure no one connects it to me. If the billionaire finds out, I'm finished." Olivia's eyes widened. Her hands began to shake. She covered her mouth to stop herself from gasping. After a few seconds, the sound of footsteps faded away. She sat still, her thoughts racing. Laura had faked the footage. The lawyer who had called her a thief was the real criminal. But how could she prove it? No one would believe her without proof. The court officer soon called everyone back inside. Olivia wiped her face, stood up, and walked slowly back to the courtroom. The next part of the hearing began. Laura looked calm, too calm. She smiled at the judge and announced, "Your Honor, we have one final piece of evidence." She placed a printed document on the table, supposed text messages again, claiming they showed Olivia arranging a sale of the medicine. Olivia stood up suddenly. Her voice was louder this time. "That's fake!" she cried. "You made all this up. You edited the video. You made these messages. You know the truth." The room went silent. Laura's smile disappeared. "Excuse me?" she said, pretending to be shocked. Olivia pointed a shaking hand toward her. "I heard you in the hallway. You were talking about the video. You said you paid someone to edit it." The judge raised his hand quickly. "Miss Kate, calm yourself." "No," Olivia said firmly. "I won't be quiet anymore. You're trying to ruin me. You don't care about the boys, or the truth. You only care about winning." The judge ordered her to sit, but her words had already caused a stir. People in the audience began to whisper, their expressions changing. Michael's face tightened. He looked at Laura for the first time since the trial began. "What is she talking about?" he asked quietly. Laura shook her head quickly. "She's lying, sir. She's desperate." But Olivia could see fear in her eyes. The judge tapped his pen against the table. "Miss Price, is there anything you'd like to clarify?" Laura took a deep breath. "There's nothing to clarify. She's trying to distract us. There's no proof of what she's saying." The judge nodded slightly, though he looked thoughtful. "We'll review that later," he said. Olivia sat down again, her body trembling. She had spoken the truth, but without evidence, her words meant nothing. The hearing continued, but everything felt different now. Laura wasn't as confident. Her voice shook slightly when she spoke. When court ended that day, Michael stayed behind for a moment, watching Olivia as she left. His eyes looked uncertain, as if a small piece of doubt had finally entered his mind. Outside, Olivia stood near the courthouse steps, breathing deeply. The wind brushed against her hair, and for the first time in days, she didn't cry. She looked up at the cloudy sky and whispered softly, "I won't stop until the truth comes out." She turned to walk home, her shoes wet from the rain that had begun to fall. The streetlights glowed dimly, reflecting on the wet pavement. She didn't notice the small car parked across the street. Inside it, a man in a black jacket sat quietly, holding a phone. He spoke in a low voice. "She's starting to suspect," he said. "We might have a problem." Olivia reached her apartment and closed the door behind her. The silence inside felt thick. She leaned against the wall and took a long breath. The faces from the courtroom flashed in her mind. Laura's fake smile, Michael's cold stare, the judge's tired eyes. She sat on the floor and whispered, "God, please, help me prove the truth." Her eyes drifted to the photo of Ben and Alex again. Their smiles gave her the strength to keep going. Somewhere, deep inside, she knew something was about to change. The lies were too many, and the truth had to surface soon. She didn't know how or when, but she felt the story was not over yet. The fourth morning came with heavy clouds above Austin, and the courthouse looked darker than usual. Olivia arrived early, her hands tucked inside her worn-out coat, clutching the small photo of the twins. She hadn't slept much. Every sound from the street reminded her of the words she heard in the hallway 2 days earlier. Laura Price had confessed to editing the video, but she still had no proof. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with quiet whispers. Reporters filled the seats again, their cameras ready. Olivia walked in slowly, her head low, but her heart steady. Something deep inside told her that this day would be different. When the judge entered, everyone stood. His voice was calm but firm. "We will continue the case of Olivia Kate versus the state," he said. Laura Price rose from her chair, dressed in her usual gray suit, pretending to be confident. "Your Honor," she said smoothly, "we are ready to finalize the presentation of evidence." Michael Walker sat beside her, his hands folded. His expression had changed since the last hearing. He no longer looked certain. He had stayed quiet ever since Olivia accused Laura in court. His eyes seemed to be searching for something he couldn't explain. The prosecutor began again, summarizing the case as if it were already over. "Your Honor, the evidence remains strong. Security footage, bank transfers, and witness statements all point to Miss Kate's guilt." Olivia sat still, her fingers pressed together, her eyes fixed on the floor. Each word hit her, but she refused to cry. The judge nodded and looked toward Olivia. "Miss Kate, do you have anything to present today?" Her voice was soft but clear. "Yes, Your Honor. I have a question." The courtroom went quiet. The judge raised his eyebrows. "Proceed." Olivia turned toward Michael and spoke, her tone calm. "Mr. Walker, did you ever check the original footage yourself, the one from the security system, not the one your lawyer brought?" Michael hesitated. "No, I trusted my legal team." "Would you look at it if you had the chance?" she asked. The judge leaned forward slightly. "Do you have a reason to believe there's a difference, Miss Kate?" Olivia took a deep breath. "Yes, Your Honor. I overheard Miss Price speaking about the footage being edited. I know what I heard." Gasps filled the room. Laura's face went pale. She forced a smile and said, "Your Honor, this is nonsense. She's repeating lies to delay the case." The judge tapped his pen slowly. "I will decide what is nonsense, Miss Price. Court officer, please contact the IT department and request the original footage from the security company that installed the cameras at the Walker mansion." The officer nodded and left the room. Laura tried to object, but the judge silenced her with a glance. The room grew tense. Minutes passed like hours. Olivia sat quietly, praying under her breath. Michael leaned back in his chair, staring at Laura now, his trust beginning to fade. When the officer returned, he carried a small hard drive. "Your Honor, this is the untouched footage from the night in question," he said. The judge ordered it to be played. The lights dimmed, and the large screen came to life. Everyone watched closely. The video showed Olivia entering the storage room as before, but this time there was sound. "Temperature looks stable," Olivia's voice said softly on the screen. "Medicine count is fine." She turned to leave. Then, a few seconds later, another figure entered the room. A woman in a gray suit, the same woman now sitting at the lawyer's table, Laura Price. The courtroom gasped. The video showed Laura looking around, taking out 3 small vials and slipping them into her bag before leaving. The judge's eyes widened. "Pause it," he said sharply. The room was completely silent. You could hear people breathing. Michael turned slowly toward Laura, his face pale with disbelief. "What is this?" he asked in a low voice. Laura stuttered. That can't be real. It must be edited." The judge shook his head. "This footage came directly from the company. It hasn't been altered." He turned to Olivia. "Miss Kate, please remain seated." Then, to the court officer, "Take Miss Price into custody." 2 officers moved toward her. Laura stood frozen, her eyes darting from Michael to the judge. "You don't understand," she said weakly. "I was only trying to protect." Her voice broke as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. The reporters jumped to their feet, cameras flashing again, this time aimed at her, not Olivia. Michael sat back slowly, his face buried in his hands. The courtroom buzzed with disbelief. The judge waited for silence before speaking again. "We will take a brief recess before continuing." When he left the bench, Olivia remained seated. Her eyes were full of tears, but for the first time, they were not tears of pain. The truth had finally spoken. Michael stood and walked toward her. For a moment, he said nothing. His voice was low when it finally came. "Olivia, I was wrong. She looked up at him, her expression tired but calm. "You didn't just accuse me," she said softly. "You made your children believe something that wasn't true." Michael's shoulders dropped. "I don't know how to fix this," he said. Olivia sighed. "Tell them the truth. That's all I ever wanted." When the break ended, everyone returned to their seats. The judge took his place again. "Court will now continue," he said firmly. Michael asked to speak. "Your Honor, I no longer wish to pursue charges against Miss Kate. The evidence shows she is innocent." The judge nodded. "The court will consider that." Before he could continue, the doors at the back of the courtroom opened slowly. The crowd turned. Ben and Alex entered the room, one walking carefully with a small silver walker, the other in a motorized wheelchair. Their faces were pale, but their eyes were bright. The entire room went silent. Michael's mouth fell open. "Boys?" The one with the walker whispered, "Daddy, we wanted to come." The judge looked down at them kindly. "Do you two want to say something?" The boy in the wheelchair nodded. "We want to tell the truth." Olivia covered her mouth, her tears falling freely now. The judge gestured gently. "Come forward." The courtroom watched as the twins moved slowly toward the front. Every step, every turn of the wheels, filled the room with emotion. They reached Olivia, and both reached for her hands. The one standing whispered softly, "She didn't steal anything. She gives us our medicine every day. We saw the lady in the gray suit take the boxes when you were not home." The audience gasped again. The judge nodded solemnly. Michael closed his eyes and lowered his head. The boys held Olivia's hands tighter. "She's our mommy." "Olivia," one of them said. Reporters lowered their cameras. Some people in the room wiped their eyes. The judge said quietly, "This court will reconvene tomorrow for a final decision. Miss Kate, you may leave for today. Gentlemen, thank you for your honesty." As Olivia stood, the twins refused to let go of her. She knelt beside them, hugging them both. "You didn't have to come," she whispered. "We wanted to," one of them said. "You never stopped believing in us." The courtroom doors opened again, and Olivia walked out holding their hands. The sound of gentle applause followed her into the hallway. For the first time since it all began, she felt peace. The next day, the courthouse was filled again. People stood outside with cameras and microphones, but this time the air felt different. The city had heard what happened the day before. The truth was no longer hidden. Inside, the reporters whispered, waiting for the final judgment that would decide Olivia Kate's fate. Olivia arrived wearing the same clean uniform she had worn when caring for the twins. She walked quietly into the courtroom, her eyes calm but wet with emotion. The twins, Ben and Alex, were already there, sitting beside their father. Michael Walker looked pale, his usual confidence gone. He had not spoken much since the truth came out. The judge entered, and everyone stood. His voice was firm as he said, "This court will now deliver its final ruling." Olivia's heart beat slowly, her hands shaking as she held the photo of the twins that she had carried every day. She didn't look around, she only stared at the table in front of her, whispering a silent prayer. The judge began to speak. After careful review of the original security footage and the testimonies given by witnesses, this court finds that the defendant, Miss Olivia Kate, is not guilty. The room went completely silent. "For the record," the judge continued, "the person responsible for the theft of the children's medication was the defendant's former accuser, attorney Laura Price, who used her position to alter evidence and mislead this court. An official investigation is already in progress." Murmurs spread through the room. Reporters stood quickly, scribbling notes, cameras flashing again. Olivia's lips trembled. Tears rolled down her cheeks, and she covered her face with both hands. She couldn't stop crying, not from pain this time, but from relief. The judge's voice softened as he looked directly at her. Miss Kate, he said, you have endured humiliation and hardship, yet you carried yourself with dignity. You are free to go. Her knees nearly gave out. She leaned on the table for support. Michael Walker stood slowly, his eyes fixed on her. For a long moment, he couldn't speak. Then he walked toward her, every step heavy with guilt. When he reached her, his voice came low. Olivia, he said quietly, I don't deserve to ask for forgiveness, but I need to say this. I was wrong. Olivia looked up, her eyes red. You destroyed my name, she said softly. You made me look like a monster to the world. I would have accepted your anger, but not your silence. You let them drag me through this alone. Michael's eyes filled with tears. He nodded slowly. I know, he whispered. I was blinded by fear. I trusted the wrong person. I thought I was protecting my sons, but I hurt the only person who ever truly cared for them. Olivia turned to the twins, who were watching quietly from their seats. You too, she said gently. You saved me. You were brave when no one else was. Ben smiled faintly. We told you it would be okay, Mommy Olivia, he said softly. Her tears fell again as she knelt down to hug them both. The room grew quiet. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the reporters lowered their cameras for a moment, watching the scene with respect. The judge cleared his throat and spoke again. This court orders Mr. Michael Walker to pay full compensation for emotional and financial damages suffered by Miss Kate. The charges against her are dismissed, effective immediately. Michael bowed his head. I accept that, he said. When the session ended, people began to clap softly. Some wiped their eyes, others nodded with respect. The same crowd that had once judged Olivia now looked at her differently. She was no longer the maid accused of theft. She was the woman who stood against power and proved her truth. Outside the courthouse, the air was bright. The clouds had cleared, and the sunlight felt warm against her face. Reporters surrounded her again, but their questions were softer now. Miss Kate, how do you feel? One asked. Olivia paused, her voice trembling but strong. I feel free, she said, and I feel thankful that truth still matters. The twins were beside her, holding her hands. Michael followed quietly, keeping a respectful distance. As they walked down the courthouse steps, the crowd began to applaud again, louder this time. Some people called out her name. Others simply smiled. At the bottom of the steps, Michael stopped. Olivia, he said gently, I know an apology can't fix what I did, but I want to make things right. I'd like you to come back to the mansion, not as a maid, but as part of our family. The boys need you. Olivia looked at him for a long moment. Her heart softened, but her voice stayed calm. I'll think about it, she said. For now, I just need peace. She turned to the twins and smiled. Let's go home. They nodded happily, their small hands still gripping hers. That night, back in her little apartment, Olivia sat by the window, watching the lights of Austin from afar. The world outside was still loud, full of stories, full of noise, but her home was quiet. She could finally breathe again. The twins sat on the couch, watching cartoons. Ben turned to her and said, Mommy Olivia, can we stay here tonight? She smiled softly. Of course, sweetheart, she said. When they fell asleep, she walked over to cover them with a blanket. She brushed their hair gently and whispered, You too are the reason I never gave up. Her phone buzzed on the table. It was a news alert, a headline spreading fast across Texas and beyond. Innocent maid proves billionaire wrong truth triumphs over power. Olivia smiled faintly and turned the screen off. She didn't need the world's praise. The only thing that mattered was peace in her heart, and the love of the two boys who never stopped believing in her. She looked out the window once more, the moonlight touching her face. Sometimes, life takes everything from you before it gives you something real. Olivia had lost her job, her name, and her dignity. But in the end, She found something greater proof that truth can't be buried forever, and that love, real love, can survive anything. She whispered quietly, "Thank you, God," and closed her eyes. Inside that small apartment, 3 souls slept peacefully, and for the first time in a long time, silence felt safe. Dear viewers, this story shows that no matter how strong lies may seem, truth always finds its way home. Olivia was judged, humiliated, and left alone. Yet love and honesty lifted her higher than power ever could. If you've ever been misunderstood or wrongly accused, remember, your truth will speak one day. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what lesson you learned from this story. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs hope tonight. And if you want more emotional stories like this one, comment "more stories" and you'll be the first to get our next heart-touching story.